Welcome. Welcome, everybody. We don't know what we're doing anymore.
No,
Oh, man. That was fun. I was getting a little Jim Carrey. I felt like the cable guy in there for a second.
I was trying to do the from Rush Hour where
Oh, yeah. A little bit of Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan. I just watched all three of those for the first time.
Really?
Over COVID. Yeah.
Oh
So
man, great movies.
good movies, man. Number 3 was so, but 1 and 2 were pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I
Yeah.
love the French cab driver in number 3.
I have to think back about that.
He wanted to
Been
be
a
like
while.
a spy.
I don't remember. Maybe I have to watch it again then because I don't remember that much of it. Anyways, folks, welcome. Welcome to the show, Dekes and Vacca show. Some of you guys that are on this channel will notice, of course, that we are doing now a full podcast version, full hockey show with my good man Eric here, which I announced before I started redoing videos on this channel again a few months ago. So for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, we cover league-wide hockey stories, not just NHL, but anything that comes up that's newsworthy. We'll talk about it. Eric and I will talk about our ball hockey team, which starts up again tomorrow for the spring season, although there's lots of snow on the ground still, but that's okay.
So the winter season is ending. I'm in a championship series right now with my other team, Buds and Brews. We lost game 1 on Thursday, 3-1, and we're playing game 2 tonight. So it's a must-win game tonight, or we're done.
Let's go.
But I have a feeling we're going to be able to pull it out, and then should be right after our Rink Rats game tomorrow that we play for the championship if we win tonight.
Okay, so you won't be exhausted for our game. You'll be tired for your championship game. Okay.
Oh, I'll be exhausted for your game too because I'm reffing from 10 a.m. till 4 p.m. that day.
Oh,
so
no
I already have
man.
7 games running around, and then I'm going to go play 2 games after that.
You're a freaking animal. Like, why didn't the rink hire you 12 years ago?
I asked 12 years ago, and then I asked every year after that. They always said, "Oh yeah, we'll get you in. We'll get you in."
Jeez. I feel like I should acknowledge this before. I'll let you guys know exactly what we're going to be talking about today in just a second. But I got to acknowledge Eric's little cat in the background there. He's looking like the hockey guy 2.0. What's her name again?
Adrian.
Okay.
Yeah,
obviously I was going to do that.
I used to have 2 cats. And the first one I got was Rocky, and then when my wife moved in, she said, "Well, can we adopt another cat?" And I said, "Sure, under the condition that we name her Adrian," because I had to have Rocky and Adrian.
You got to negotiate the terms first. That's a good move.
That's it, right? So
good move, guys.
Yeah,
very cool, very cool. Well, all right, so let's get into her today, my friends. So this is what we're going to be talking about. These will be the subjects we'll be going through. So trade deadline, who stays, who goes. I'm going to be looking to Eric to tell us who he thinks we're going to be adding, who's going to be staying. Maybe I'm going to show a tweet from Chris Johnston based on the maybe lack of talk lately, but it always heats up closer to the deadline. We all know that. Jack Eichel's return to Buffalo, the drama that ensued with his post-game presser. Of course, we'll talk about the Buffalo Sabres, and will they finally get on track following the Jack Eichel era here? Vegas's cup window, the cap crunch situation that they're in, they probably have a window of a few years here, and they really got to make it work if they want to go for a cup real soon. Referee accountability. This is going to be a good one, especially for you Toronto Maple Leaf fans that witnessed. I watched that game the other night. I watched the whole comeback actually against the Arizona Coyotes.
Yeah,
and that was a fun game.
Yeah, I missed the first bit of it, but when I turned it on, they were down 4-1, and then they started winning, which is usually the opposite of what happens, because usually I turn it on and I'm like, oh, they're winning, and then they blow the lead, and I'm like, is this my fault?
I know, everyone thinks the same thing. It's like the same mental complex, right?
Yeah.
So I get it, but all right, let's start with. I think we'll start with the Eichel drama because it's pretty current, and we're going to spend a decent little chunk on trade. So let's talk about Jack and his return to Buffalo. We've got some visuals here. I think everybody in the hockey world saw some of the mixed reaction, but this one was the most well-known, of course, across the fan base. Thanks for nothing, Eichel. Boo. The title's there, but you can see at the bottom. There's like half a boo written there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Jack's return to Buffalo, pretty uneventful for him. The Sabres get the win. Alex Tuck, part of that Vegas deal, getting in on the score sheet, getting around Eichel actually for a goal.
Didn't Krebs score as well?
And Krebs scored too. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So my goodness, wasn't a great return for Jack. Some salt thrown into the mix there. There's some salty, I think Jack was holding on to this for a long time. I don't think that it's a secret that he wasn't happy with the Sabres organization. So
clearly, yeah.
This was a long time coming for him just to let him finally have it and say what he really thought, wasn't it?
Yeah. And you know what? Like, honestly, I didn't think that he would even say anything. I thought, at first I thought, okay, he's not going to say anything about it. He's just going to act like every other hockey player and be like, oh yeah, well, that's I understand some of the fans and blah 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 blah, and then you move on, right?
Yeah.
That's how most hockey players are coached to answer questions like that. But then he did come out with a bit of a comment, and I don't know. I thought after I heard the comment, I said, well, you know what? That's actually kind of Jack Eichel fitting, because he's never been somebody to shy away from what his opinion was. And we know that going all the way back, right to the beginning of his career. And, when he was like, this is just an example of an organization going all in on a generational type player. And I think that the organization, when they started out, sort of did things the way that every other organization would do things. And then maybe they found in that player somebody who wasn't as easily molded by the front office people. So he gets drafted in 2015. He makes his NHL debut. He becomes their youngest to 20 goals ever in the organization. The next year, basically they give him the captaincy, or no, they give him a huge extension for 8 years at 80 million or whatever. And then they give him the captaincy the year after that. So here's this 21-year-old kid who's now the captain of the team. They're trying to do a McDavid thing with him where, McDavid was able to step into that role quick with the Oilers. And, they know that he's going to be there. They have really nobody else in their system that's going to be able to do that. But it was a gambit by the Buffalo organization that didn't work out, because I don't think Eichel was really ready for that level of leadership.
Yeah.
And then when Eichel started questioning the GM's moves, and Eichel started kicking the coach out of meetings and trying to tell, him how to coach the team or who he would play for, which coaches, demanding that coaches get changed. Yeah, that would be the one there.
Yeah, let me remove this title to see the whole thing, but yeah, here you go.
Yeah. And, then all of a sudden now, I mean, we all know that the ownership in Buffalo doesn't like to be pushed around very often. And Eichel, a couple years into his career, gets injured, wants this surgery, and they just decide, no, we don't want to do that with our asset. We want to do it the long way, the hard way. And then the Cold War of all hockey Cold Wars ensues after that, and he ends up in Vegas for a decent package. So, yeah, I guess it came really as no surprise that he had his choice words for Buffalo, and I think that it's too bad that he's out west, really, because if he was in an Eastern team and we got to see him play Buffalo, you imagine if he was playing on Philly or Montreal or something, or one of these Buffalo rival teams. Pittsburgh's right there in Pennsylvania area, and Rangers are a big rivalry with them.
Yeah, Rangers were rumored, but I think Vegas was always the front runner. The Rangers wanted him, though. You can tell, but
yeah. So, I mean, and if you're Vegas, Vegas seems to be always like this sort of wild, fun-loving town, and they're always just having fun out there. So, is this guy the right fit for this team? Hopefully, I would say, but
he won't be the center of attention. I mean, he'll be one of the pieces, but he's not the only guy.
He's not the only guy. Although I think that when Mark Stone comes back, they got a shot to go through the playoffs with him, kind of like they did with Tampa did with Kucherov last year. But they're not going to be able to afford both after that. I don't see how you can keep Stone and Eichel with all the other contracts that they have. They have no cap space now as it is. So that's with Stone out. If he came back, they'd be millions over. So, I think you'll see probably Stone moved in the offseason, or if they can make that trade. And then Eichel's obviously going to be your number one center moving forward. He's had a pretty good, since he's been back, he's scored a couple goals. He's got a few assists. So
he got one last night.
Yeah, he's stepped right back into being a point a game player. But I think the long-term underlying worry is here's this new surgery that no hockey player has ever gone under before. And let's say you move Mark Stone and you're like, okay, we're all in with Eichel. And then a couple of years down the road, he takes a bad hit and they realize because of the way that was repaired before, now he's got a worse injury, or maybe it deteriorates a little quicker. So you get maybe 4 or 5 good years out of him. And then all of a sudden now you're stuck on a contract that, for a declining player that can't play as much. There's some risk there for sure. And, but I think it's going to be fun every time that Vegas comes to town. It's only going to be once a year, unfortunately, but every time Vegas is in Buffalo, that'll be a game to watch for sure.
Yeah, well, and in a moment I'll bring up I have cap friendly up here, so actually I think let's just get into this, because I think looking at players that I don't think Vegas wants to move on from Mark Stone. He's their first ever captain. I have a hard time seeing that move happening this season or this off season.
Oh, yeah.
But I do, yeah. Just because I think Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith, Evgeny Dadonov, you go down the list, those guys are all $5 million cap hits each. William Karlsson's in till 2029 or whatever the heck it is here.
That's going to be a bad contract.
That one you can't move. But I think Jonathan Marchessault, Riley Smith, Evgeny Dadonov, you try and move those first, absolutely, before Mark Stone. Because I just think he's just been too much of an important piece for Vegas. And I think that you have to try your hearts out to keep that intact. And let me just bring up the cap situation for Vegas, Eric, so you can have a good look yourself, and also for our viewers. So you got Jack at the top now, of course, with that big $10 million cap hit. I mean, Pacioretty's only on the books for another 2 seasons, which $7 million is not a terrible cap hit based on the production you're getting out of him. So now that you look at this, though, like you actually look at the cap situation, do you see more of where I'm coming from in terms of trying to?
Yeah,
because you don't even see Mark Stone's cap hit. I think we got to scroll down here, right? It's on the LTIR.
Yeah, you got to go all the way down, right?
9.5,
9.5, and then you also have Alec Martinez, right? So
you can give away
you can't give away one of your best defensemen.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from more. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like,
that's tough.
The problem with keeping Stone is he's injured so often. Like, he's great when he plays, and he's one of my favorite players in the NHL, but he's injured so often that in situations where he's in and out of the lineup, it prevents you from making moves on your team. So you're like, okay, we could pick up this guy. We got a good trade involved and stuff now, but what if Mark comes back in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Then what are we going to do? What if, like in the off season, we're like, okay, we want to move out these guys and build here. And then, okay, so now we've given away a bit of our supplementary scoring, some of our supports for cheaper supports. And then now Mark Stone goes down. Now you've got Eichel with maybe substandard support. And that's exactly the situation he was in Buffalo, right? So it's somebody who wanes in and out of the lineup like that, who's making that much money, makes it very hard for your team to make moves that need to happen. You could see this situation being a Montreal fan. You could see it with Carey Price. You know what I mean? Like he comes out and it's great. You're living happy because you got 10 million in cap space to play with, but you don't know when he's coming back. So you can't add enough, you know what I mean? And then he comes back and all of a sudden now you're over the cap and you've got to make more moves, or you make all the moves you want to get up, you pass on moves in the off season, because you're expecting that $10 million player to play. And then all of a sudden he plays a few games and he's out for the season. And then, you've missed out on an opportunity in the off season. So it just causes you a lot of problems. And it really depends on how much your organization doubles down with the guy, whether they say, look, we're going to support the guy no matter what, and everything else. But you have so many teams out there right now that are chomping at the bit just to get to the cap floor, that would love to take on these big contracts and stuff like that. And, some of these teams can get a little bit fleeced if they're like, well, look, we really need to move out this contract. So they take back a substandard package in return just to get rid of that money. And then all of a sudden the guy comes back and plays great. Like Mark Stone, imagine he goes to Arizona or something like that, and then him and Kessel become two of the best duo in the NHL next year or something. And you're thinking, man, we should have got rid of Mark Stone. But, can you take a risk on a player like this? It's tough. I wouldn't want to be an NHL GM. I tell you, it's hard to do.
Yeah, well, it's way easier being an armchair GM. Am I right, everybody? I know I am, but in terms of that, before we move on from the Jack Eichel situation, I kind of want to touch on the future of the Buffalo Sabres organization, because I feel like after Jack now the saga has finally ended, and I do like some of the pieces that the Sabres have. I do like some of the pieces coming in. We got Paterka coming in, Jack Quinn coming in eventually. I'm trying to think if there's another name that's escaping me right now, but the Sabres probably going to get another top draft pick this year. Tage Thompson's been a revelation for them this year. And you've got, Owen Power. Hello. There was a big name I was almost forgetting there for a second. So they've got some pieces that do suggest that they can finally get on track. Mm-hmm. And they've already shown that they're starting to try to create their own identity. And the feeling I get, at least right now, is hopefully the Pagulas, the owners, have learned from the Jack situation and said, okay, now we need to and this is going to be a discussion that you and I are going to have right now. Maybe we need to let GMs be GMs, and maybe bring in a president of hockey ops and take our hands off of this, for a while, because clearly it didn't work with Jack. They tried to bring in Taylor Hall to save, whatever rope they had left with Jack to make it work, and that didn't even come close to working. Like, there's just so many things they tried. They brought in Eric Stahl even to try to get like some more veteran presence around Jack. They did everything they possibly could. But what do you make of where the Sabres are at right now? Do you have hope for this team going forward for them?
Yeah, I do. And so there's two things I want to mention. And one thing you brought up is definitely hits the nail on the head, is that they need a president of hockey operations. There needs to be a buffer between the owner and the GM. And I've been saying this for years out there, because the owners, as as good as they are at, keeping money pumped into the team and keeping it alive in Buffalo, they just, if they're the ones signing off on your hockey moves and they don't know hockey as well as, there's so many knowledgeable hockey guys out there that you could hire for that role. Even bring in an ex-Buffalo Sabre or something, somebody that, has some front office experience, that the town recognizes, to be able to say, when the GM comes and says, look, I need signed off on this move, they can get together and they can say, okay, do we want to do this? Is it the right move? Work out the whole strategy and then bring it to the Pagulas so that they can say, okay, this is how we're going to move forward. And we've talked about it on this level and all that other stuff. But right now you got a GM who listens to the people who are giving him suggestions, and then he goes up to the owners and says, yeah, this is what I want to do. And the owners say, okay, go ahead, or no, don't do that. And is that coming from a hockey knowledge base, or is it just coming from, what they want to do? Are they thinking about the money side of things, or, and history shows that as soon as you start running anything, any company or organization based only on your bottom dollar, other areas of it starts to suffer, right? So you start, who's making a president of hockey ops can make decisions on who gets hired as in scouting, who's running your AHL team, all that. Right now you've got the owners doing all of that. Or if the owners aren't doing all of that, then it's all going on your GM, which is way too much for him to handle. He should be able to step back and focus on just the things that he needs to focus on. So, president of hockey ops definitely needs to happen. As far as like the future of Buffalo and their players and everything else. So teams, in my experience, watching hockey for the last 36 years, I always notice teams go through 4 stages. So they're a bad team, which is bottom feeder team. Nobody's having any fun. They're rebuilding. They're just losing. And, you're just dealing with contracts and stuff like that. And then once you get a little bit of good build going, you got some young talent and you've got some extra cap space, you become an exciting team. So to look at a good example of that would be Detroit. So Detroit a few years ago, really bad team, but made the right moves that now this year they're super exciting to watch. Still probably not going to make the playoffs, but they're getting up there. And every game, even if they're losing more often than they're winning, they always seem in it. They always can surprise you, those kind of teams, right? And then after being an exciting team for a while, you become a boring team, but a winning team. You win more often. because you're playing more solid hockey, you're a little less exciting than you were before. But now all of a sudden you're starting to make the playoffs. You're starting to get into those wild card spots or third in your division spots, and you're less exciting but winning. And then the final step is to be an exciting and winning team, and that's when you start becoming a contender. You have a chance at winning something. So yeah, the Sabres are still, I think, in that bad team range, but they have the pieces in place to, over the next couple of years, become an exciting team. And then if they, once as their young players start to mature and emerge and the leadership group gets solid and everything else like that, they could become a winning team within the next 4 to 5 years, I think. Which the Buffalo fans really would like to see, I think.
Oh, well, yeah, it's going to be 11 years that they haven't made the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And I do like some of the young pieces that they have. And even with Jeff Skinner having the season that he is, the high cap hit that he had, I mean, it hurts less with Eichel's $10 million off the books, right? I mean, like,
nobody really minds, you know. And
yeah,
you got a guy like Skinner who's been in the league a long time. He can help these young kids mature a little bit, you know, and he can say, this is, don't let, your careers, like Skinner's career was up and down. He was fraught with injuries at first, and then he didn't seem like he was going to turn out to be the player that they thought. And then he went to Buffalo. Buffalo thought that they had a gem because he played so great his first season there. They're like, oh, hey, we fleeced them. And then they gave him a huge contract, and then he's kind of not been really lived up to that contract yet either. But at least he's there for leadership. At least he can, he can still have some good seasons, and he can show these young guys, what it's like to play in the NHL, and how the business works and stuff. So,
yeah, and he's been producing like this season, especially. I remember that one Super Bowl weekend, he had 4 goals against us on the Canadiens, and I was like, holy smokes, like, just I mean, that was at a low point right at the beginning of the Marty St. Louis era. But that's what I want to touch on just for a second, is because, of course, I follow Montreal closer than any other team. That's what I cover mostly on this channel, and of course on Haps Tonight. But what they've done with the front office, with the coaching situation, with the entire front office, all within a month and a half, 2 months, completely cleaning house. They've got a new president of communications. Like, they're getting with the times, as Chantel Maccabee, the new vice president of communications, has put it. Mm-hmm. And I think the Sabres, I have to think that they're looking at what happened with Montreal and saying, okay, like, what if we bring Rob Ray up from the broadcast booth and help us with some player recruitment, or Mike Pekka, or just some Sabres legends, Pat LaFontaine, is he interested? Like, just some players that have some familiarity and some passion and some familiarity with the fan base. Like, that does get your fan base excited if these guys are passionate and genuinely want to help. Mm-hmm. The Canadiens hired Martin St. Louis, as we know, and he's had great success at the beginning of his coaching career. They quietly brought in Vinny Lecavalier in a role that doesn't even require him to be in Montreal, but he's still contributing. President of hockey ops, new general manager. They just hired a new skills coach who was with Toronto. Mm-hmm. He's now the head of hockey development, like, just completely just changing their approach. That, like, the Montreal Canadiens have been old school for so long. So to see this as a fan is so beyond refreshing. And I think the Sabres fan base would completely welcome they've already cleaned out their front office. We saw that happen in the bubble, or in 2020, in the first part of COVID. So I just think that there's got to be something to learn from what the Canadiens did here for them, or even any other team for that matter. I think Eric is Eric is stunned by my suggestion, so he's a little bit frozen right now. But we'll get him back on in a second. And that's the approach that I'm taking. I think is that, yes, it's obvious that I follow the Canadiens, and therefore it's the best example that I have to go on. But I have to think that, as I mentioned a minute ago here, that the Pagulas are going to have to learn from what a team like the Montreal Canadiens has done, and absolutely try to learn from it, and try to, success leaves clues. So if this success continues for the Canadiens in the way that they've rebuilt the front office, I mean, why not? Why not look at doing a similar approach? So, Eric will join back in a second, but this is something that's interesting for me as a Montreal fan, being half an hour from Buffalo, because I've often thought of making the Sabres my second favorite team because they're so close, and I do genuinely want to see them win. I follow Melody Martin, of course, on YouTube. She just made her return to YouTube as well. So, all right, here comes Eric again.
Sorry about that. I just completely lost internet connection.
That's all right. I kept going. But basically all I was trying to say was, I don't know where you cut out there, but I was basically just saying it's very easy for me to look at the Canadiens example of what they've done in order to rebuild their front office. And I have to think that the Sabres would want to learn from that and try to do something very similar here, because if they bring in some familiar faces from the past, I mean, I can't help but think that it could work. So I don't know if we lost you. If you lost Eric again, poor guy. His internet's coming in and out. There you are again. We're doing our best.
I don't know why this is happening. My bad.
It's okay. Somebody's playing some freaking video games next door.
It's possible. Yeah.
So, but if we can get you in here for this, we'll do our best. But basically, like what I was just kind of running through was, can the Sabres learn? Like I was mentioning like a minute ago, I was going to get your take on, what if they bring in guys like Mike Pekka, Rob Ray, some players.
Yeah, I heard most of that.
So
and I was just thinking, like, too, that's hard for Montreal to do, especially going to the Stanley Cup Finals the year before, and then realizing, hey, now we have to completely rebuild our team after going to the finals. It's just that's a tough road for them. But
they may not do a full rebuild the way they're talking, though. Like it might just be a restructuring. So we'll see what happens. But
at least a rebuild of your front office, anyways. It
was a long time coming. We didn't even have an analytics department.
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that the team necessarily needs to be rebuilt. Like you got some good pieces there, and I think you'll probably be back in the playoffs sooner than later for sure.
Yeah.
And the Sabres, the question is, will they learn from it? And the Sabres have a bad history of not learning from mistakes of others. So
right.
I think it starts off with that they really need a hockey ops manager, and if they are a president, and if they don't do that, I give them, like, they'll have an exciting team, but will the structure above the team be good enough to be able to put them to the next level? Maybe not. So we'll see. You have to sit back and watch and see what they want to do, whether or not they have the maybe the Pagulas just don't want to pay a hockey ops president. If that's the case, then I mean, I give them at best a 50-50 chance to get past the exciting phase, because exciting phase is great and it lasts a while. It can last a couple of years, but eventually, if exciting doesn't return results in the long run, then exciting becomes the opposite of exciting and everybody gets pissed. Right? I've seen that happen with the Leafs for years. They always had exciting young players and stuff like that, or even simple things like, we put MacArthur, Kuhlman, and Grabowski together, and then all of a sudden they're the hottest line in the league for a few months and everybody's excited, and then all of a sudden they started not playing as well together. It started to even out, and everybody's like, wait a minute, this isn't even anywhere near as good as we thought it was. So and then all of a sudden now, every time the line makes a mistake or gets scored on and stuff like that, it's like it turns quick. Fan bases turn quick on against exciting if it doesn't produce results in the long run. So they need to structure it properly, like Montreal has done, and hopefully get the right people in place, and that's the only way they're going to get to the next level.
Yeah, and they did it quickly, the Canadiens did, in terms of the front office stuff. So, I mean, thankfully Jeff Molson has vision and is a progressive thinker, clearly, because he's willing to change his approach. And that is what I appreciated. But for the Sabres, they have the young talent in place right now. I mean, they all started with Dahlin coming into on the back end there. They maybe could really use a goalie still. But I just think that, like, if they mess this up, it's totally on the Pagulas at this point. And Kevin Adams, I think, is doing a decent job so far as GM. And now that they've moved on from the guy that he was the franchise. I mean, clearly, like, Jack was doing way more than he should have been, had way more pull than he should have.
Yeah.
So that situation is done with, and I think that they have a lot to look forward to if they can stay on track, because they're showing signs of being able to become an exciting team. Dylan Cousins is another young, great up and comer as well. But let's jump into. I think we'll finish with trade deadline. So let's go right into to referee accountability. Of course, specifically the other night, we know the non-call that happened, not just against Austin Matthews in the loss to Arizona, but of course we saw the non-call on Ovi on TJ Oshie the other night. Or I'm Oshie.
Not on Oshie.
Sorry, it was the non-call on Ovi. It was Edmonton, wasn't it? Were they not playing, or am I screwing that up?
Sure. I'm not sure.
Well, I know that it was Ovi that they did not make a call on, and then it was Edmonton, yes, because Edmonton still won in overtime, but it might have even not got to overtime if they made that hooking call on Alexander Ovechkin, which they did not. So that call and then the Matthews call immediately highlighted that at the GM meetings coming up very soon, Darren Dreger pointed out that refereeing will be a big topic of discussion. Of course, before the playoffs as well. So what do you make of referee accountability? Are we ever going to see them answer to the media? This has been a discussion we've had on Habs tonight as well. So what do you make on this whole situation?
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever see them answer to the media. And I'll tell you why, because I mean, at least not without 5 or 6 years of serious training. So you can put a player in front of the media all you want because they've been trained since they were 13 years old how to talk to the media and what to say, what not to say. We don't really have that with referees. The referees have always just been told, don't talk to the media. So you get some, and it takes a certain type of personality to be a referee. You know, you have to be a bit of a dictator on the ice because everybody thinks that they're right. And yet it's you that's making the calls. So it's tough to put a referee in front of a camera and say, why did you make this call? Why did you make that call? And I think that after a while, it would become rather redundant. But I think what you will find is consistency reviews being more in the forefront. Maybe something like a, player safety type style reviews where they can say, this is how the referee saw it. And this is, we talked about it after in the hand, and this is the rule in place. I think that there's a lot of hockey people, even analysts, that don't know that rule book front to back. I definitely, from being in a position of being a referee, heard even analysts on TV say, why isn't that a penalty? Or why was that this or that? And not knowing that, hey, there's a rule here in place for that. You know what I mean? And it's, the analysts are always going to think that they're right as well. And as a referee, you have a really hard time always explaining to people why a call is made a certain way. But the real problem is underneath all that, there is, I remember when they caught the one referee on Mike saying that he was trying to even up the calls. We all know, everybody knows, everybody who plays hockey, everybody who watches hockey knows that referees have done that for years, but it was never said. So there's this undercurrent of, almost like a corruption in there where it's like they have these little unwritten rules that they go by.
An agenda.
And they don't, it makes for a good hockey game. It's a formula that they've developed over years, but at the same time, it's a little outside the rules, and you're ignoring some rules or overcalling some rules to make that happen. And then when it becomes public knowledge, there's all this outrage of people who are like, I can't believe they're doing this, when they all knew that everybody knows that the refs would do that. So yes, the question is, and this is the crux of the point. The question is, do we want that to change? So do we want an NHL where everything that even remotely looks like a cross check is called? Everything that remotely looks like a hook or remotely looks like a hold is called. And we have people in the box all night, every night, because there's a demand for extreme consistency off the board. Do we want an NHL where a game that is called as tightly on October 12th as it is on April 12th in the playoffs? Or do we want an NHL where the old school sort of formula of flexible rules in important games or in important moments in games is kind of let go a little bit? Now, if you're a fan, it's so easy to wane. It's so easy to go, oh, Austin Matthews didn't get called when he was, he didn't get the call when he was held, and they scored against us. So the refs are dumb and they're stupid, and this all needs to be changed. And you throw your hands up. What if this happens at a playoff game, right? But then all of a sudden, if it's the team that you're playing against that should have got the call, and then they don't get the call, and then your team scores and wins the game, and everybody shuts up about it. There's no fan that ever jumps on Twitter and goes, yeah, I'm glad my team won, but that really should have been called. And, the ref consistency sucks. And that's the focus. No, they say, hey, you got to play through it. The refs aren't going to get everything. Sorry. And I think, honestly, that if they change too much about the way that the refs control and like have that game management, you'll find the NHL to be a bit more boring. You might get back to, it would happen gradually, but you might get back to almost the days where the clutch and grab was allowed and teams were playing the trap like crazy, and it was less scoring, and it was not as exciting because everybody's afraid to even go near each other. You can't, what's fighting for position in front of the net going to look like if everything's a rough? You know what I mean? So I think we have to, sometimes when it comes to refereeing, we got to take our lumps and we got to say, it was not called. We should have got a call there maybe, but it wasn't called because it was this certain situation and they wanted to let them play and decide who was going to win the game on their own. And that's just the way the chips fall. Sometimes it's going to fall in your favor sometimes, and sometimes it's not. That might be a better NHL. I think that they've done a great job cutting down on things like headshots. And we did see some questionable situations. Like, for example, you remember when Vegas was, they were playing in Game 7 and Vegas was up 3-0. And then they were playing against the Sharks. And I think it was Pavelski that got cross-checked in the face-off. They ended up with that 5-minute major, and the Sharks come back and score 4 goals. Vegas ties it, but then the Sharks win in overtime. And that was a huge controversy as to whether or not that should have been a major penalty, considering it's just a cross-check. But at that time, there was a lot of pushback from the league. People were screaming all year long. Fans and players and coaches, GMs were screaming, we've got to get these intent to injure plays taken care of. And then all of a sudden in the playoffs, it happens where somebody gets injured from maybe not a real, like a 2-minute minor type play, but he's injured. He's down on the ice. His face is broken open. And you're like, well, they've been screaming at us all year to make these major penalties. So major penalty. And then all of a sudden there's this huge comeback. And everybody that's cheering for Vegas, everybody in the Vegas organization is like, oh my God, how can this possibly be a major penalty that cost us this game? And cost us the series. They're out of the series after that. And so that's the counterbalance to it. So,
well, that's the thing. Like, it's, people call it the hockey gods or whatever, and you kind of, as a player, are a victim of however the game is being called. In that instance, the other night against Matthews, he kind of stopped skating when he was just like putting his arms up and just gave up on the play a little bit, right? So, if he didn't do that, he could have prevented that overtime winning goal by Chychrun. So,
yeah, sometimes you just got to fight through it.
Especially in the playoffs. Like in the playoffs, like he was going to keep going, right? He kind of, I don't know. I just think that as easy as that is for me to say, he did kind of stop playing there. He was just like, there's a penalty coming, right? Like that was his approach, and there wasn't, and therefore that's what resulted.
If you watch the play too, it's not even a clear-cut penalty. There is a little bit of a hold, but really what held him up was the fact that he had his stick behind him and it got caught across the other player's stick. And that was what really held him up. The hand on was only for a very short period of time. And again, it's a game of inches, and all it takes is a little bit of a pull. And I get that they want to get away from that, but at the same time, you're playing in overtime. You got to fight for those positions.
It's harder to get a call in overtime, and it should be. But like the Ovechkin one was, to me, way more clear. Like that one to me, okay, yeah. Like there was a very, very clear hook there. It was more than just a second. It was a tug, and like it impeded him from continuing to make progress on his skates, right?
Yeah.
So that,
and if Edmonton loses that game, you can imagine it would be
of course
behind it. Yeah.
So in that instance, to me, like the hockey gods kind of helped work that situation out. And this was a regular season game for the Leafs the other night. So really, hopefully they learn from that and don't count on the refs. Like our ball hockey team went through that for so long, and it was really us that was accountable, or not holding ourselves accountable for all the calls that were coming against us. Instead, I was trying to convince the guys, listen, however the game is called, we have to take ownership of what we can do to control how the outcome of the game comes.
Yeah,
right?
that's the same message that I give them as well. And every time
Yeah.
that somebody's screaming for a call, I'm like, just play through it, guys. Just play through it.
It's just it's hard. You're going to be pissed off. Be pissed off. That's fine, but don't stop playing. Don't just be okay with the loss and just be like, oh, it was the ref's fault. We lost, and that's it. No, like lose with dignity, right? Like that's kind of what I was trying to tell the guys before we won our first championship. It was like, all right, guys, like let's not lose because we didn't give it our all. Like let's lose if we just simply weren't the better team, but we did give it our all. Like that's got to be the way you approach it, no matter if it's the NHL or whatever kind of hockey you're playing. Unfortunately, the refs just aren't on your side. They're there to referee both teams. They're not picking a side. So you have to find a way to fight through it. And I think to me, overcoming that's a piece of adversity, right? Like that's another piece of adversity is how the but at the same time, the league is going to look at it and they're not going to just, keep things status quo. They're probably going to have a discussion and say, listen, okay, is there any little adjustments we can make? But like you're saying, you don't want to adjust it so much that it just goes the other way. And then now it's boring hockey again. Like you just don't want that, right?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, so, that's really the crux of it. And I just say to the people that are demanding consistency among referees, think about whether that's the NHL you really want to watch, or if you want to allow them to continue to control and game manage the way they do. Something to think about.
And I think it's something to think about. I think it's fair. Yeah. So let's end with this, V. So trade deadline is only days away at this point. So I want to put up a tweet from Chris Johnson the other day. Now, again, this is early in trade discussions. There's only been a couple of moves. Everyone thought after the Toffoli trade that things were just going to start, players were going to start dropping like flies, and the market was just wide open. But so this is more of a James Duthie concern. But some concerning news for James Duthie, Trade Center host, courtesy of an NHL executive, referencing the amount of activity ahead of the March 21st trade deadline. Quiet, extremely quiet. Scary how quiet it is. No one wants to commit. Now, this could be very true in terms of the salary cap situation, but I mean, this is like almost 2 weeks before the deadline, so I don't fully buy that. I just don't. I think teams that are ready to contend and want to spend and want to add are going to do that. But is it going to be anything beyond like the major players that we expect to go? I can only reference Ben Sherratt, of course, is like even GM Kent Hughes, the Canadian, said he's gone. He's got so much interest, in St. Louis is a front runner for him. But that being said, what do you got in terms of players you expect to go or players you don't expect to go?
Yeah. So just to go back to that tweet there as well. I mean, it's always takes like everything's quiet usually at first. And then what happens is it takes one big fish to move. And so let's say Sherratt goes to, let's throw out a random team like Las Vegas or something like that, right?
Speaking of cap crunch.
Yeah, exactly, right? I know it's probably that would never happen, but it's like let's say it did go there. Then what happens is teams in the Pacific, Calgary jumps on and says, "Oh man, we're trying to make a playoff push here. Now we need to pick up a defenseman." So then they go after,
and then Mark Giordano comes back to Calgary,
and then or Mike Giordano, and then it's like, oh yeah, they picked up them, so now there's only these two defensemen left, so we better snag one of them. And what happens? It just turns into a snowball effect, and then everything happens all at once, right? Almost never do you see everybody stand pat right to the end and just say, we're good. That never happens. So, I think it'll start off with a few minor league things. And then, so you'll see a few minor league deals. Some people will move around that don't matter as much and just depth pieces being added. And then people will see, hey, other teams are making moves. Let's start making calls. Let's ramp up making calls. And then a big trade will happen. And then it'll just be like a cascading domino effect and they'll all start to fall after that. But yeah, I mean, as far as like, people that I'm expecting to be moved, obviously Chychrun, I would love to see Claude Giroux get moved and get a chance at a Stanley Cup with somebody that's going to be a contender. And I'm hearing that Colorado is probably where he would most likely end up. And I mean, Colorado already being the wagon they are, having Giroux in their lineup would be unreal. Sherratt, as you said, I think you could see there's in the top 10 list of people that are likely to be moved. 5 of them, I think I would say, are defensemen, right? So, I mean, Colin Miller would probably leave Buffalo. Giordano, you mentioned Josh Manson, Klingberg out of Dallas.
That's going to be one to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. People that are looking to add defensemen, i.e. Toronto Maple Leafs, they need defense.
Do they need defense?
They still do. They still do. Yeah. Although now with the goaltending situation out there, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, do you look at trying to take Georgiev out of New York Rangers just for some depth? I mean, Campbell's injured. He's been injured for a few weeks, rumored to be injured. Maybe that's why he wasn't playing as well. So he's taken a couple weeks off here.
That would make sense to me. Yeah.
Mrazek, in his chance to really step up and claim that number 1 spot, did not look good. He got pulled the other night. So, yeah, I mean, there's some value to the idea that maybe Toronto would look for a goalie. And we also know that Toronto is a big trading partner with Arizona, and Arizona's got the biggest fish on the market right now with Chychrun. But what I've also heard that Arizona is demanding an Eichel-like package for Chychrun, and I don't see that. I don't see anybody paying him what he's thinking for that. So I think you would see maybe a good, serviceable NHLer, a defenseman to replace, and maybe a 2nd or 3rd round pick at most for Chychrun. But he does have term, and he's got a good contract, so that's the big fish out there. And
3 years at a cap hit of $4.6 million.
Yeah. So
23 years old. Yeah. Oh my, like left defenseman. So
another couple big fishes to watch would be Max Domi in Columbus.
Yeah, he's on number 13 on the list. I'm going to pull up the trade bait list for you, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I was thinking Brock Besser as well. And
he's on there.
You could imagine Brock Besser being moved to a team that's looking for scoring depth going into the playoffs. My God. Oh yeah, there you go. So yeah. And you got to look at like teams that are looking to be sellers too. I mean, if you want to try to tank out the rest of your season and get a good draft pick, I think Seattle, you could see moving a good amount of their team. I think that teams should be really looking to take a run at Mason Appleton, because Appleton, when he was in Winnipeg, he was a problem for a lot of teams. And when it was the Canadian only division, man, I hated that 3rd line from Winnipeg. Every time they played the Leafs, they would just run the show on them. And Appleton was a big part of that. So if I was Toronto, that's who I'd be going for sure. But yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty standard deadline. I think the teams that are bottom feeders will be sellers. I think the teams that are going for it will be buyers. Look for teams like Vegas to be leaving guys on LTIR right till the show, because it works so well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked so well. I mean, even with in Toronto with Jake Muzzin, I mean, here's a guy who's got concussion syndromes. He's skating, but it's very easy to say, oh, he's not feeling so well, leave him on. I don't want to accuse teams of cheating, as it were, but yeah, it's another thing we all know that they do. So you want a chance at a cup,
you can do it.
Yeah, you want a chance at a cup. That's how you do it. So at least for now, until it gets changed. But
a lot of UFAs here too, man. That's what I want to point out. I'll be shocked if someone doesn't aggressively go after Closure. He's a UFA. Most of his salary's been already paid this season because he's got a high cap hit. It's $8.27 million. So it's not a small amount, but he is a UFA.
Yeah.
And he's got to be a rental. Like, you got to take that guy for a rental. You just got to wonder what the package is going to look like. But John Klingberg's a UFA as well. He's 29. He's a little older than I thought he was.
Yep.
So, but
a
again, UFA.
lot of injuries in Klingberg in recent years. He's been out a lot.
Yeah.
I know because I took him in both of my keeper pools, and he's been sitting in my IR for a long time, for a lot of years. But when he's playing and he's healthy, he's a force, and he's somebody that you want on your back end for sure. So I wouldn't hate the move. I really wouldn't, as long as it wasn't giving up too much. I think a team like Toronto, they really need to be weary about giving up their 1st round pick, because they've given up firsts every year and it's never really worked out. And if it doesn't work out again, then the fans are going to start turning on the front office there. But I think
their rope is very thin.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's only going to take a couple dominoes to fall, and then the rest is going to be very exciting. And I'm sure we'll do another special after, maybe do a trade bait special after the deadline goes, and see who's ready to go.
We'll definitely talk about it. Yeah, like I mean, this trade bait list isn't the sexiest I've seen. I think it's pretty light in terms of players I expect to be moved, but you got to give up something to get something, and it's going to be hard for the Leafs specifically to not give up something significant to try to help them. And I don't think, like you said, I don't think Kyle Dubas knows. I don't think anyone knows fully what they need, but I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked to see certain guys go. Like I think, Max Domi would be a great addition. But in terms of players that I expect to be moved, whatever team it happens to be, I think Mark Giordano, he's a UFA. I'll be surprised if he doesn't go back to Calgary. I think that'd be the perfect time to bring him back. Just the fact that they're making a run this year, like Calgary's all in. Calgary's all in at this point, and I'll be shocked if they don't make a serious offer. And there's already been talks of bringing him back after this, like in free agency, because he's a UFA. So I think
that team could win. They could make a deep playoff run this year. I would throw my hat in now. I would throw my hat in right now that Calgary will be in the conference final in the West this year. I would be very comfortable making that prediction.
Yeah, and it on paper, yes. It's just the playoffs are such a hard thing.
They're usually pretty good in the playoffs, though, when they get in there.
Yeah, and they're deeper now. Like they're deeper now than they have been in recent years. And then Mangiapane's just had like an eruption on his own. So hopefully that translates to the playoffs for him.
He's really good.
Yeah, so he's been a revelation, big revelation for Calgary too. You know what's a name I want to throw at you real quick? And
sorry if you guys can hear my baby cry.
That's okay. He misses you.
He wants out. That's for sure.
This is not a trade I see happening this season, I don't think, but this is for Leaf fans and this is for you. And I'm going to do a separate video on this altogether because it's been on my mind for a long time. Okay. He's a UFA. He's on this trade bait list. So he's here listed at, I don't have it up right now, but he's listed at number 45, right-handed defenseman. His cap hit is still very high it says $8 million this season. But what do you think of PK Subban ending up in Toronto after this deadline as a UFA? Do you see it?
I've heard that for years. And
I see it, man. I got to say, I do. But
at league minimum, why not?
Why not?
but if you're going to bring in that guy with that name, you have to know, like Keefe has to be dead to rights. If you're not performing in your own end, you're in the press box, and that's all there is to it. I don't care how much clout you have. I don't care how much the fans like if you scored a nice goal. If you can't defend our end, you're sitting upstairs. And that's the big thing. And I mean, you could bring him in for super cheap. I would easily give up a late round pick for him, or, some minor league deal or whatever. I'm not giving you a first or a second for him. That's just not going to happen. But
what's what I mean? But I'm saying he's a UFA. Like I don't think this is going to happen before the deadline or at the deadline. I think it's going to happen in the summer if it does. And I think Toronto would be
sign him.
Well, yeah, he's a UFA after this year, so his huge cap hit comes off. So if you can make a deal work, and the reason I say that too is because, I mean, maybe it's a small thing to consider, but like the JT connection with the World Junior team when they won the gold medal. I mean, John Tavares is the captain. I think that PK would respect him. There was a big locker room divide between PK and Pacioretty when Pacioretty was named captain, so that clearly didn't work out. But I just think that PK being from Toronto, just getting shipped out of Montreal when he loved it there, and I don't think in terms of narrative, just narrative alone, I think it makes a lot of sense. But I mean, it's got to make sense on the hockey side more than anything else. I just think that the right side for Toronto has always kind of been a bit of a question mark too. I mean, is Liljegren going to be a long-term solution? It kind of makes sense if the Leafs are able to get past the first round and the Dubas regime remains. I think I'd be shocked if they don't at least inquire on PK Subban.
Yeah, the problem is that like to get PK Subban on the Leafs, he's going to have to sign for league minimum basically.
Yeah, and then this also includes having to trade out a big piece because some people think that still could happen, but
yeah,
too many question marks for this to be a possibility. I just think it makes sense. And the only, not to cut you off, but the last thing and the only reason I even like kind of brought it up partially too is maybe it was a bit of a premonition, but last year I was thinking about this being a possibility a while ago, and I didn't think the timing was right. But long term down the road, I thought it might be. And then all of a sudden, the next morning, PK and Dangle are having an interview on Dangle's show on his YouTube channel. And I was like, "What the heck? This is weird." So I just thought, like, okay, I'm going to leave this year. I'm going to not. Yeah, I'm not going to say anything publicly, but right now, I think we can at least start the fun chatter about it. I don't know.
Yeah, if he wanted to go, if he did like a Spezza thing where he says like, I'll sign for you guys for league minimum, I just want to play for the Leafs.
He's made his money, right?
Like, then for sure,
you got to want to win. If
you take him on that level. But if he says, hey, you know, you guys offered me 1.5 million, and you know, Arizona's offering me 2.5 million. You know,
get a better offer.
If that's the case, then they're just let him go. But
yeah, he's got to want to win more than anything. And
yeah, if he wants to be a Leaf, Dubas could make that happen. But if he doesn't, if he just wants the best offer that he's going to get, he won't be a Leaf.
He doesn't need money, man. The guy has endorsements out the wazoo. He signed that.
Does he want money? It's about what he wants, right? Not so much what
That's
he
what
needs.
I'm saying. Like, I think it's at that point in his career where he wants to win, and you know, like Wayne Simmons' homecoming from Scarborough and Toronto, like he loves it. Like Wayne Simmons loves being a Toronto Maple Leaf. It's very clear. Mm-hmm. You know, Spezza's from Mississauga. Michael Bunting's from Mississauga too, I think, isn't he? Like right around the GTA.
Yeah, those are guys that want to be there for sure.
They do, and I think that PK is clamoring to be in the spotlight again. And you know what? Like, I know that that's either a good or bad thing depending on where you are, but he's been in the hottest market other than Toronto, and that's Montreal. So it would not faze him one bit to be a Toronto Maple Leaf from the media. The media is going to love the guy.
Yeah, he'll fit in.
If he can fit in and make sense and play well, then that could turn into
with a team that has as much swagger as Toronto does, like he would.
He is swagger. Yeah. That's all he that's his main shtick, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I personally never really liked him all that much. I mean, he's a flashy player.
Yeah, he's a flight risk sometimes, but
when he gave Stone that chop on the wrist in the playoffs, I think I finally lost the last ounce of respect I had for him at that time.
Yeah, like I get that.
But he's older, he's more mature now, and you know, I know he's a good guy off the ice. I know I love him on TV. He's a great analyst when they have him on, and he does all the side stuff too, which is great. But yeah, like I said, if he wants it to happen, then it'll happen. But if he's just looking for whatever's the best offer, then it won't happen.
For sure. And that's why I think I think there could be a fit if he can make it work on the hockey side and, you know, give Toronto's back end something to be excited about again. I mean, like Morgan Riley and PK Subban in your power play, like that sounds kind of sexy. But
so you got 9 scored shorthanded goals.
Then you have yeah, I know. And I think pairing him with you need a bigger body too. So him and Muzzin would be maybe a fun pair to watch. That could be a really fun.
Be interesting for sure. Yeah.
So like I know I'm floating it, but I just think that I kind of like good hockey stories, and I just think that PK's got still more to give from the hockey side, and he's like Nashville. He went to the Cup final and they didn't win, but New Jersey, like that's not a great market. Like
Jersey's starting to look good though. I mean, everybody that they picked up is all of a sudden starting to play great.
True. I just mean
maybe like, PK Subban leaves and then they make the playoffs. Imagine that story. Oh
yeah, he's an entertainer. He's a performer, right? So I think that you got to go where performance and the spotlight is going to highlight that.
Vegas.
Yeah.
End up in Vegas.
And that's why I think just really quickly back to Jack Eichel for a quick second. I mean, guys like Alex Pietrangelo in that locker room, like he's one of your top leaders. I mean, I know Mark Stone has the C, but to me, Pietrangelo's got the C like underneath. He's got an A or whatever. But
for sure,
I think that's where maybe Jack can make things work, and he's going to just hopefully be a big part of the solution.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he's matured enough to the point where he can handle that now.
Yeah, like he's not going to be running the show in Vegas, so that's the whole thing there. But anyway, we've gone on for almost a freaking hour here, but
yeah, I'd say we're about out of time.
I think we've had some good chatter here, but if you've stuck with us this long, my gosh, thank you. We certainly get into so we thank you for that, folks. But we just wanted to dive into these subjects before the trade deadline. I'm not sure if we'll get one more in before the deadline, but we'll definitely get into it after. So yeah, so I think maybe we'll end the show on our song, because why the heck not? But yeah, thank you guys for watching.
Play us out.
Any final thoughts there, Eric?
No, I'm good. Thanks guys for watching, and like and subscribe, and awesome.
Yeah, that too. Please do. But this is our longer form show on the Drew Dekes channel, but I love to partner with you on this, my man. So look forward to seeing you on the floor tomorrow. No excuses, Eric. Let's go.
I'll be there.
He'll be there after he referees 9 games and then plays 3. All right. Thanks for watching, folks.
Exactly.